The indie author revolution has been around for more than a decade, but we indies continue to push the boundaries of what we're capable of. From getting over initial prejudices to staring down perfectionism and author imposter syndrome, we've become a force to reckon with. Indie authors now wear more hats than ever as we strive to create a career full of meaning, prosperity, and potential. We've juggled the demands and continue to be rebels in the face of adversity. Now, after years of hearing the shouts of hustle and grind, we indies are rebelling again. Gone are the days of publishing a book a month until we drop, and in its place are the seeds of a better way to rapid release. A way that feels incredible as we build a sustainable, lifelong author career that not only increases our visibility and royalties, but it's all done with intention and ease. If you're ready to buck the system and become the visionary authorpreneur I know you're meant to be, you've come to the right place. I'm Carissa Andrews, international best-selling indie author, and this is the Author Revolution podcast. Well, hello there, and welcome back to the Author Revolution podcast. I am so happy that you have joined me this week. Oh, guys, this week I am so excited. Now, today we have Ashley Long coming on. She's a Municipal Liaison for NaNoWriMo, and she is in the Tennessee region. And what's really interesting about this is that Ashley and I connected on LinkedIn, of all places. Like, I post things about the podcast and things that I'm doing out on LinkedIn. She happened to go searching to see if anyone even talks about NaNoWriMo on LinkedIn and came to me. She found me and we started chatting a little bit back and forth through the DMs on LinkedIn. And we found that we had so much in common and so much that we loved about the NaNoWriMo process that I just couldn't help myself. I had to invite her onto the podcast to be able to talk to you a little bit about what NaNoWriMo Municipal Liaisons, also called MLs, do for NaNoWriMo and for Rymos in general. So, what do they do in order to support the people who are taking on NaNoWriMo, trying to write their novel and getting those 50,000 words in during the month of November? What do they do? And should you even become one? These are all questions that we go over and we talk about in the podcast today. And I know that you are going to find it just as fascinating to listen to Ashley as I did the first time around when I was listening to her as well. So without further ado, let's hop into this podcast interview. Welcome, Ashley, to the Author Revolution podcast. I'm so excited that you're here. I've spoke a little bit in the introduction about how we met and a little bit about what I know about you, but I would really love for you to tell my audience a little bit more about who you are and your writing experience and what it is you do.
Okay. So I'm not a writer by trade yet. I am a former music teacher. So I guess musician is like my first creative background. And it kind of leads itself well to getting into writing because I did some songwriting and stuff when I was a teenager. But so I currently am working as an instructional designer instead of a teacher, which usually I have to explain what that means to people. So basically, I design training courses. If you've ever taken a training class for a job or anything, it could be online or in person. And the kind of cool thing I found when I started this job was I get to write a little bit as part of my job. So I might have to write like a scenario or a case study for a training course, or take the information someone gives me and turn it into a script for our e-learning modules. So that was kind of a perk when I got into my first job, and I was like, oh, wait, I get to write a script. Okay. So,
Right.
It's not what I necessarily want to be writing, but it's kind of cool that I get to include that in my job. And occasionally I do get to do some writing. So as far as writing goes, I've been writing since I was a kid, and I haven't published anything yet, but I do have, manuscripts that are done and need some extensive editing and sometimes rewriting. But it's hard with, being in a master's program and working full time and stuff to find the time to get that done. So I'm hoping next year is going to be my year to kind of start getting some things out there because I graduate in December. So
Congrats on that.
Yeah. So, and I mostly write like fantasy, urban fantasy, anything that's not really based in a realistic setting.
Same.
And,
I love it.
I'm starting to kind of branch out to try to do some more like romance and just regular romance. We'll see if I can keep the vampires and stuff out of it. But I always feel like I try to start writing something that's not fantasy, and somehow I'm like, oh, I need a vampire in here, or
Right.
let's have a shifter or some magic show up or something.
Yep.
So.
Yep. Oh, I love it. That I can so relate.
Yeah.
That's epic. Okay, so we need to talk about Nano though, because
Yes.
you've got like this really cool special title that we need to discuss because we're coming up on NaNoWriMo.
Yes.
What has your NaNoWriMo journey been like? When was the first time that you participated in it?
So I actually think I was listening to one of your Nano podcasts, and I think we started maybe the same year.
Okay.
I think you said something about like you did Nano in your head.
Yeah.
That you like did it, but you didn't like officially do it.
Yeah.
So I think that was in 2010.
Yep.
And that's when my first official Nano was.
That's
it was
awesome.
a horrible year. We'll just, it didn't go the way
not a great
it should
year.
have. But
Okay,
it was technically the year I signed up on Nano.
Nice.
And kind of got involved, and I think I wrote like 2,000 words or something. I didn't really get it. I didn't really lean on the local group and everything, didn't get involved. So
I didn't even know local groups were a thing. Like I literally just got my little sticky pad out and every day wrote down how many numbers of words I got and inched my way towards 50K.
Yeah.
So that's how I did it. I didn't even do it on their website or anything.
Yeah. Yeah, like I knew there was a group. I was in Columbia, South Carolina at the time, and I knew there was a group, and I was a member of their region on the website, but I got the emails. I'm very shy, so I didn't want to show up at one of the events or anything. And so, funny story, that April, I had started hula hooping, which is a completely different story.
I love it.
But there was a hoop group in Columbia. And I went and, started meeting people, and we were giving out like email addresses and stuff to start like a little newsletter and everything. And one of the ladies there gave her email address, and I was like, why does that name sound really familiar? And we got to talking, and it turns out she was the ML for Columbia, and I had been getting emails from her, all the last November about Nano.
That's too funny. Okay, so before you go much further, what does ML stand for those of the people who are listening?
It's short for Municipal Liaison, which is basically a fancy term for volunteer community organizer.
Nice. So that would be much easier to say because I trip over Municipal Liaison every single time I say it.
It's just a fancy term.
Which is why everyone says ML, just FYI.
Yeah. So, of course, I met her, and she dragged me to events that next November.
I love it.
I had my kind of person who was in charge was like, come with us, come to this thing. And I knew people because, I get really like awkward about social situations. So, and
as
that
do
year,
all writers almost.
Yes. And that year I hit my 50K. So I felt like going to, groups really helps motivate you during the month when it's such a crazy, crazy thing. And I've been doing Nano ever since. And it's some years I don't do quite as much, especially the few years in between where I wasn't leading a group, but I try my best to hit 50K every year. So
if you've done Nano on and off since 2010, but you haven't published yet, what is stopping you? I gotta know this. I'm like, what are you doing?
Editing. I love the thrill of like writing it the first time, but and I can edit other people's stuff all day long. You like send it to me, let me read it, let me especially like line edits and stuff. But when I have to get to my own stuff, I'm just like, I do a lot of editing in my head, and some of the Nano drafts need some serious work. Like my very first one, I have a complete rewrite planned for it, which is what I'm hoping to start on in January. Because I'm actually taking it from a non-fantasy spy thriller to a sci-fi spy thriller.
Nice. Nice.
So like most of the stuff needs a lot of work, and I just haven't had the time or brain power with everything else to put into actually editing things. So
I feel ya. I get that.
That's my big hold up right now. But I have some stuff that I think I can get out in the near future, and I want to work on a romance series for next year to kind of start putting some stuff out there while I work on the bigger, more in-depth world building fantasy stuff.
Gotcha. I completely understand that too. I've gotten to the point with all of my fantasy books that I'm like, I want to try something new. And I've had this series in my head that it kind of popped in a couple of years ago, and I'm like, I'm not a romance author. What's happening with my brain? What's going on here? But it hasn't left me alone. And so finally I'm like, you know what? Why not? I'm just going to try it, see what happens. Well,
right.
I'll do it in the background of whatever else I'm actually doing. And why not? Sure. So we'll see what happens next year. I'll be starting that in January as well. But it'll be under a different pen name. I won't be using Carissa Andrews. I don't know. We'll see how it goes.
Yeah, I definitely separated off on like my Twitter with my pen names. I have one that I separated off for the romance stuff to kind of keep the fantasy and romance separate. So
and it's so smart because with Amazon and the way that the algorithms work, if you start to mesh those two together, it gets a little confused. And so you get romance readers coming to your fantasy stuff and going, who the, what the, why the, and vice versa. Right. So yeah, so it makes sense to keep them separate. Although I do know many authors who have been established in fantasy for a while and then switched to romance, and they do fine. So I don't know. Well, I'm not going to do that, but we'll see what happens. Okay, so you joined quite a while ago, and you have works that you need to start publishing. FYI, get them out there. You don't know what you don't know till you do it. Come on. Right. So I'll be your cheerleader. Okay, so what obviously got you to the point then, because now you're a municipal liaison. What happened there? How did that whole thing happen?
Well, I moved out of Columbia to the Florence, South Carolina region, which is like a smaller area about 2 hours away. And they had a region, but it was super small. And the ML there was I guess, I don't really know what happened, but he's kind of took a step back. He was still technically the ML, but basically that year I was like, hey, do you need help? So I kind of ran the region that year. He basically passed the baton to me. So unofficially I was the ML in I think it was 2013. And then in 2014, I officially took over the spot for that group and started kind of building that region up because it was a super small region, especially compared to Columbia, which is like the capital of the state and everything. Right. So, I started getting a group of core Nano members, and we started meeting outside of Nano months and started a thing called PD Riders, which the area is called the PD region because it's near the PD River. So we, started doing a lot of other things. I started up a website and, featured the authors who had books published, and they would do blog posts. And we even did some local festivals where they got together and split the cost of a booth to vend their books and everything. So it was really great. So it was kind of something that started as me being the ML for the Nano thing, and it took off into something more. But unfortunately, I had to leave South Carolina in 2018 because I had some stuff change in my life. And so I ended up back in my hometown in East Tennessee. So I had a few years in there where I wasn't an ML for a region, and there's not a region where I live now because, again, it's a small town.
Sure.
But a couple years after I've been back with the ML for what's called the Elsewhere region, which is pretty much everyone in a state or a geographic area that doesn't have their own little
I live in Elsewhere region as well.
Yeah. So
I do know.
So one of those MLs stepped down, and I was like, hey, do y'all need another ML? So I got back on as being a leader for the Elsewhere region here. And this year I'm like the lead ML because the other two MLs had to step down for various reasons. And I kind of put feelers out and was like, hey, does anyone want to jump in and help? So
nice.
So we have another new ML, which is awesome. But yeah, it's been kind of like ups and downs and ebbs and flows, but I love being an ML. Elsewhere's a little weird because it's a virtual region mostly, which has been fine the last 2 years because we've not been able to do in-person events due to COVID. Yep. So this year we finally get to plan some in-person events, but Elsewhere, since we're so spread out, it's mostly virtual events. And we have a few pockets of RIMOs in certain places that we're going to try to host a couple things, and some organizations are what they call come right in locations.
Yep. We have a library that does that.
Yeah. Yeah. So we're going to try to do some more stuff with them this year since we can officially host events again.
Nice.
So,
Okay, so you're gonna have to, for me, and the way that I've described it often on the podcast is the online version of it, because to me that's pretty much all I really have the option to do for the most part. Like I said, I've had a friend who I think we were talking before the podcast started, who was an ML, and she did a little local thing here, but it was in a small town, like 5 of us showed up. So it was really tiny. But can you describe what is it that the MLs do, and like explain these like in-person events?
Right. So basically, we have just a very few, because it is a volunteer position. There are very few actual requirements as far as physically hosting events, just because, it's volunteer. So we mostly have to host some sort of kickoff party to kind of get people going. And then we have at the end a TGIO, thank God it's over party. And
I know that feeling at the end of November.
yes, like 12:01 on December 1st.
Right.
It's over. So I would send out weekly emails that you've probably gotten before from your regional ML to, cheer people on, let people know what's going on. Because of course, Nano is a nonprofit, so they do, donation days and, initiatives like that. So we like to let people know about those things going on, because some people might not know about that. And basically just, get to cheer people on, help people out. And every ML kind of runs their region a little differently. And it kind of depends on your group and who you have. If you're in like New York City, obviously it's going to be way different than a small, rural area. So one of the things that I find myself doing a lot is when we are doing a ride-in, whether it be virtual or online, is helping people work through things if they get stuck, And so I feel like MLs also kind of have to have a good grasp on how to write, certain genres and everything. And at least, know what kind of questions to ask to help people get through their roadblocks. So, kind of guide them through. So, and that's one of the things that I love about it, is getting to help writers kind of brainstorm while they're trying to write if they get stuck, or, cheering people on, motivating people. And as far as in-person write-ins go, they are a lot of fun. Usually we just plan a couple hours. It could be, I have hosted at someone's house before in a small rural area when we all kind of knew each other and stuff, but typically we shy away from that and try to do public spaces, of course. Sure. So spent a lot of time at Panera Bread, a lot of time at Barnes and Noble.
Now you must be in a bigger, smaller town than I am, because I don't have either one of those. The nearest Panera and Barnes and Noble is an hour and a half south of me.
Yeah. So that was when I was in South Carolina.
Okay.
I don't have either of those things here. No, that was in South Carolina. But we also, do coffee shops, libraries, really anywhere that will let people come in and sit for a long time and write. And typically when you get together with other writers, it's kind of like, well, that seems weird. Are we just going to sit there together at the same place on your computers, and like not pay attention to each other? Yeah. So, but really it's more like, you get to talk to people about stuff. If you get stuck, like I was just talking about, you can be like, hey guys, what do you think about this? Or quick, I need a name for something.
That's what Scrivener's for. Come on, it has like a whole name calculator thing. I don't even know what the thing's called.
Yeah. So, and then we call them word wars, where in the first region I was in, but like word sprints, basically. Okay. If you want to do it like more competitively and see who had the most words at the end of the sprint,
that's cool.
You can, and that's why we would call them word wars. And I'd always have a bag of candy or something.
Yep.
So, and if we got way off track, be like, okay, guys, it's time for a word war. 15 minutes, start writing now, go.
Stop talking. Shh. Phone down.
Like, we have completely blown like half of this write-in. So,
and
it's just a way to really connect with other writers, other people who like really get you. I'm sure you understand, but unless you're in a room with a bunch of other writers, like it just kind of, you don't know what you're missing until you get there. You're like, oh, hey, these people are cool to talk with about things that the NSA probably is looking at my search history for.
The NSA won't know if I ask this person.
Yeah, like I went to a panel at a con about like that a mortician did about how to like dispose of dead bodies for,
Nice.
writer purposes.
Yep,
like,
yep.
oh, these are my
You need to
people.
have, like,
We can
writer
totally
badge
talk about
on
this.
just to make sure.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, that's funny. One of the write-ins that I went to, it was so fun because there was, like food and stuff. So as you're in the write-in, you just got food and drinks or whatever. But Nano also, now let me know if this is still going on for you guys, but they gave like little swag things, like little stickers and pens and whatever stuff. So is that still a part of it?
It is, and I don't have my Nano stickers with me. I actually just got my ML kit in the mail, I think 2 days ago, and I was super excited. So I was like, yay, stickers. So the last 2 years, I've actually, since we're virtual, done a sign up form for people who wanted a sticker, and I've actually mailed stickers out.
Wow.
So which I got a little bit more of a response than I was expecting, honestly, but I'm totally fine with it because I would make, when I was in an in-person place, I would do goodie bags for like the kickoff and put, like a pencil and some Post-it notes or some sort of thing in there with the sticker. And depending on the theme, I think one year it was like a superhero theme and I got these little superhero things and put in there. Nice. But we were a small group. It was maybe for like 10 people that would show up. So it wasn't a huge investment, but I know some of the MLs and some of the bigger regions, they do like fundraisers and stuff with their WriMos, and they go all out and do all this really cool swag and have their own like stickers for their own region and all kinds of cool stuff. So
gosh, makes me want to be in a bigger city.
Yeah, sometimes I'm like, because I'm probably moving sometime in the next couple of years, so I'm kind of scouting out places, and one of the things I'm looking at is their Nano region. Like, what do they have going on
sorry,
here?
You're too small.
Like, is this a good region?
Love it. That's a pretty cool reason to move or to that particular place.
Yeah.
That cracks me up. So if people are online though, like if they, whether they're COVID conscious still, or if they're just more introverted and they want to do the online versions, how do they get participating in some of those events that are more virtual right now?
So it kind of depends on, the region. For us, we use Discord, and we have like there's a bunch of sprint bots and stuff you can add to Discord channels where people can run their own sprints, and we'll say, hey, we're all going to be in the Discord from this time to this time, and you come join us.
Do they find out about that through the Nano site first though?
Yes, at least that's the way we do it. We have a link to the Discord and like our Facebook group, and I think that's all this region has, but anything that you have, you can link from the Nano website. So we do mainly use Discord. We have some participation like on the Facebook group, but it's kind of hard to run sprints and stuff really in a Facebook group.
Absolutely. Maybe like 5 years ago, you might have been able to, but
yeah. And there's a lot of writers now doing things on Twitch, the streaming service. And in 2020, a bunch of MLs got together and started a writing weekend, 100 hours of writing. We call it OHOW. And so every year since things has been really popular, we get on and do 100 consecutive hours of writing streams on Twitch. And that's usually, I think this year it's the second weekend of November, so people can join in that way. And then a lot of those MLs also host other streams throughout the month. And usually people are fine, like, oh, you're not in my region, it's okay, come on in.
Right.
So there's
We're
a lot
of writers here. Come on.
There's a lot of opportunities now virtually for people who either can't go to write-ins because of geographic constrictions, or they are COVID conscious, or what have you. So
yeah, that's really cool. I know when we first started, it didn't feel like there was as much of that. For me, it was more Twitter. So like I learned about Nano through Twitter, and so I would talk and communicate to other people who were doing sprints through Twitter, and that was the way we operated. So it's so interesting to see the way that it's evolved over the years.
Yeah, there was a Nano chat. I don't know if you ever used the Nano chat that was through the actual Nano website.
I did not. No,
it was kind of like an old school chat room. And there was a bot in there named Timmy, and he would say random stuff.
Love it.
Yeah, I was really fond of that chat room for a long time, but it kind of, the last few years, a lot of people move more towards Discord and Slack and things like that, because so many of us are using it in our daily lives for other things.
Yep. I use both. I use Slack for my like teams for my PAs. And then I use Discord to be able to connect with my son, because that's like literally the only place he will actually respond to me is Discord. Oh, goodness. Children, you got to love teenagers. So if people want to become a municipal liaison, how did they go about doing that then? How did you get signed up?
Well, mine was kind of just, I went to that new region and the guy was kind of stepping down. So if you are in a region and someone's going to be stepping down, or even if you're in a region and they don't necessarily know their MLs are always happy to have minions to help,
Yes.
especially if it's a geographic, like very large geographic area, and you want to host something in your area. As long as you clear it with your ML, they can put it on the calendar and everything for you. And then that way, the next year, if there is kind of an opening available, that ML will already be like, hey, maybe one of my minions will be interested in doing this, because they've already been kind of sort of MLing already. So usually around May, Nano puts out a sign up sheet, basically an application, and it's to gauge how many MLs are returning, how many are resigning, and get the application for people who are interested in becoming a new ML. And usually I think there's a link on the website where you can go ahead and sign up to be notified when that happens, if it's something you're interested in. And they put out, like, if they know someone's stepping down and there's not going to be an ML, they will put out a thing for that region that says, hey, your region needs an ML. If you're interested, please apply here. So for me, with my other two co's stepping down this year, I kind of sent out feelers to people who'd been pretty active in the Discord and throughout the website the last couple years. And luckily, one of them decided to jump on board, and she's got some amazing ideas and is an awesome addition to the team. So I'm super excited to have her helping out this year.
That's so cool.
Yeah, so there's a bunch of different ways to sign up. Well, there's only one way to actually sign up, but there's a bunch of different ways to get involved, and even see if it's something you're interested in by helping out the current ML, because they usually need help or will take help. Right. I know very few MLs are going to be like, no, you can't do that. Unless it's just something that's completely out of our, code of conduct or something.
Right. So do MLs also work for Camp Nano, or is it just like the main event?
The main event's the biggest thing, but it technically is an all year sort of position. And I do camp stuff. Some MLs do more camp stuff than others. I like to try to at least send out an email and say, hey guys, camp's coming up. If you're interested in participating, we're going to be, hanging around the Discord, and just drop in and say, hey. So some MLs are more like November heavy, and some also are super into camp. And it's not, our rules are changing a little bit as far as how much we need to be involved the rest of the year, because they're looking at adding another position called a regional steward that's kind of over like a group of MLs. It was supposed to happen this year, but some things, it's just been crazy. So,
right.
So it just really depends on the ML. So some years my camp participation is like, yes, I'm doing camp and we're going to do this. And other years I'm like, camp what?
Wait a minute. It's July already? What?
Yeah.
Or
I kind of miss the old
April and July.
April and July. Yeah. I miss the old camp cabin website. That was so, just getting a random cabin with a bunch of people that aren't in your region. I kind of miss that whole layout, but yeah, I still like to do camp to kind of work on edits, or if I'm trying to run with something, because it gives me a reason to write during a month that's not November, because I feel like I just hyper focus in November, and the rest of the year I'm like, oh, I'm a writer. Do I write?
Right.
Like I have this whole writing thing going on, so
I completely understand that. That's kind of what happens to me if I shift my focus. My PA is always on me to be like, she's like, why aren't you writing right now? I'm like, I'm creating a course. Okay. Right now I got to focus on the course. And it's like, when you're focused on something else for a little bit, it's like, oh yeah, that's right. I got a book. I got to finish that thing. Oh no.
Yeah. And I've been so ingrained in academic papers the last few years that it's just kind of like, I don't have the mental energy to put towards too much other writing. So then it's like November, I can really say, okay, I know I have to write something for class 2, but I'm going to work on this fantasy novel this month.
Yes. It's my escape for November, okay?
Yeah.
Literally,
I have a group of
to
writers to lead.
Yeah. Oh, funny. So how can my audience find, like if they want to find you or learn more about becoming a Nano Municipal Liaison, see, I got to slow down when I say it, otherwise I'll screw it up every time. How do they get in contact with you?
So I would say right now, because I am kind of redesigning and rebranding my writer stuff at the moment, the best way is probably through the Nano website, especially if you want to talk to me about Nano. So the way to find me on there, the easiest is to look up the Tennessee Elsewhere region, and on our regional page, I'll be one of the 2 people who have profiles on there. And my username is Murata Granada, which, like 12 years ago was my attempt at a fun, punny Spanish name, but it's not quite grammatically correct. But I still like the way it rolls off the tongue. So
yes.
So that's probably the best way to find me. Of course, you can find me on LinkedIn, which is how we connected.
Yeah.
And then I'm always up for emails. I can give you, my email. I know it's a little old school, but
is it AOL?
No, it's not that old school. It is a Gmail address. I do still have a Yahoo address, but I hardly ever use it because it's overrun with spam. But
nice.
No, it's the.evening.muse@gmail.com, and I totally read and answer emails. So,
awesome.
If anyone wants to talk to me about Nano or have a writing buddy for November or any other time, or find out more about the other stuff I do, I'm more than happy to share, my pen name and stuff like that via those channels. So
wonderful. Well, that's amazing. Is there anything else that you would like to tell my audience about Nano, or anything that we haven't discussed yet?
I think we've pretty much covered everything. I guess I always tell my rhymos when they get stuck or having a hard time, like, just get the words on the page. That's kind of what November's about, because it's put away the editing, shut up that inner editor,
yep.
Just write something, because, you can't edit a blank page. So if you don't put something on the page, you're never going to get anywhere. So that's kind of like my mantra for November. And just go for it. If you don't hit 50,000 words, that's okay. At least you wrote something. Anything is better than 0. So
absolutely. Any words is better than 0. And keep in mind too, that done is still better than perfect. So keep moving forward.
And, practice. You got to practice. I think that's the thing. I was talking to my friend that was the municipal liaison that dragged me into all this from, like 12 years ago. I was talking to her yesterday, and I'd been looking through my old draft that I wrote in 2011/12 versus the thing I've been working on the last couple of years. And I'm like, wow, my writing is completely different.
Right.
So, just practice and stick with it. And that's, kind of what I tell my rhymos and try to instill in them every November. Just go for it. Don't worry so much about the 50K. It's great if you win, but just show up and write something.
Yep. I think that's an interesting point that you made too, about how your writing changes. It's also, I think, why it's so important to like cut a line in the sand and say, okay, I'm done with this now, moving on to the next project, because you could sit in like perpetuum forever, editing the same single book over and over and over again. And it would always be evolving, because you are always evolving.
Right.
So it's good to just cut it loose, move on to the next thing, and continue to create all the beautiful new words that are going to come out. It's so much fun. Trust me, there are so many times where I've looked at my very first novel from 2010 and gone, I really should redo that. No, I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to do that.
Just leave it alone.
Yes. My husband would give me the side eye if I started tinkering with pendomas again. He'd be like, what are you doing? Nothing. Nothing, dear. Fine. Totally fine. Well, thank you so much for being here, Ashley. I so appreciate it. And I'm so glad that we connected on LinkedIn. It's such a cool experience. So
I know. Thanks for having me. I was excited when you were like, hey, you want to talk about Nano on my podcast? I'm like, I will talk about Nano all day long.
Me too. Funnily enough, me too. Well, thank you for being here.
Thank you.
Well, guys, I hope you are as excited about NaNoWriMo and the idea or prospect of getting involved with some of the more local or even online events that NaNoWriMo does, all thanks to those municipal liaisons or volunteers who are helping to coordinate events for NaNoWriMo. It's just It's one more way of authors being able to connect with other people who are like-minded, who are in their tribe, who are doing the thing they're doing, and can help to support one another. Look, we're writers, and writers are often very solo people. We like to kind of herd ourselves into like little spaces and get into our big worlds in our heads rather than dealing with a lot of people in the outward world. But when you have that opportunity to really connect with people who are doing the same thing you're doing, there's just this magic that happens because all of a sudden it's like, oh my gosh, people who understand me, people who understand the struggles that I'm going through when it comes to being a writer or trying to publish and trying to get my books, more seen and more visible, or trying to earn more money. All of these things start to become more acceptable. You start to see more pieces of the puzzle where you're going, oh, you're struggling with that same part of this too. Okay, maybe I'm not so weird. And now all of a sudden you have things that maybe were holding you back or making you feel bad. And instead, you can start to feel like this whole process is doable, because it is. This whole entire process of writing and publishing and even earning a living from your books is entirely doable. And it all just can stem sometimes from that little hand being held out by a municipal liaison or someone that is in your local community who is helping you to understand things in just a slightly different way. So hopefully you will head over to NaNoWriMo's site to be able to, number one, sign up or get your region figured out, because having that region figured out is going to be super helpful for you. Like Ashley was talking about, they're active on the Nano site, but they're also active in other places like Discord or Slack or Twitch. So you can do a little bit of digging and find your people. Find your people who are next to you, who are near you, who are capable of speaking your language, because you will be amazed at how much further you can get this Nano as it gets started. Now look, guys, we have less than a week before NaNoWriMo starts. And now's the time to start digging around, start finding your tribe so that you can get the people on your side who are going to be there to support you and for you to support them. This, my friend, is just such an incredible opportunity, and one that I hope that you don't miss out on this year. I will make sure that links over to Ashley on NaNoWriMo, as well as just NaNoWriMo's site, are going to be on the podcast episode show notes page. So if you're interested in getting that information or downloading the transcript to today's podcast episode, head over to authorrevolution.org/155, and you can get all of the goods right there. Okay, well, my friend, hopefully this has convinced you that NaNoWriMo is a really amazing opportunity for us writers. If you haven't already done it, if you haven't already joined it, what are you waiting for? Honestly, get involved. Become part of this process. You're going to enjoy it and love it as much as I do, trust me. And my friend, that's all I have for you this week. We will talk more about NaNoWriMo, I'm sure, next week, because next week it's going to be week 1 and it's kicking off. So in the meantime, I want you to go forth and start your author revolution.